Greetings. So, I want to talk with us about this topic. Why did Moses and Aaron or Aaron not enter the promised land? I'm sure you would have heard various speakers talk about this passage and speak about why Moses. In fact, most persons do not mention Aaron. They just mention Moses. But suffice it to say, both men were told by Yahweh that they would not enter the promised land. Let's find out why. Now here are some questions to ponder, and we'll return to these questions in a few minutes. Why were the two leaders prevented from leading the people into the promised land? Was it because Moses called the people rebels? Did he actually say, "Drink ye rebels," as some people frequently state? Let's examine the passage and see what the Word of God has to say to us. And I trust that you will allow the Holy Spirit to lead you, as I believe the Holy Spirit will lead me in directing this teaching for this session. We pick up at Numbers chapter 20, and we'll read the first 13 verses, and I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. Then the sons of Israel, the whole congregation, came to the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Now Miriam died there and was buried there. There was no water for the congregation, and they assembled against Moses. Now Moses and Aaron or Aaron. Now let's pause here for a moment, because this word, we need to talk about this statement. They assembled against. Now the word means several things. It means to gather as an assembly or congregation, whether it is gathering for conflict or war, or they may be gathering for rebellion. It is the same word used for gathering for religious purposes. So when Yahweh said, "It shall be a sacred assembly unto you," same word. They also gather for judgment. So the same word is used in these various contexts. In this particular context, it was the people gathered for rebellion. And we see the same word and the same context used previously in the same book, Numbers 16, verse 3, which reads, "They assembled together against Moses and Aaron, and said to them, 'You have gone too far. You have gone far enough. For all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?'" This story took place in Numbers 16, where Korah, Dathan, and Abiram decided that they would rise up against Moses' leadership. They felt that Moses and Aaron were taking on too much leadership roles, and they wanted a piece of the pie. And so they gathered not just themselves, but they gathered some of the Israelites against Moses and Aaron. And of course, the story, you can read it in Numbers 16, how God destroyed them. Let's go back to our passage. In verse 3, we read, "Then the people argued with Moses and spoke, saying, 'If only we had perished with our brother when our brothers perished before the Lord.'" Possibly they referred to that which happened in chapter 16 with Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and all the people who perished with them. Another possibility is that they were referring to those who died because of the bad tidings that they brought back from the land when Caleb, Joshua, and the 10 spies came back from Canaan with a report. There were 10 spies who gave an evil report, and the Lord destroyed them. Or could they be referring to all those who died in chapter 11 when they asked for meat. And the Lord sent them quails, and they started eating the quails with such ravish appetite, ravishing appetite, that they even ate it with the blood and ate it, and while it was in between their teeth, the Lord slew them. It could have been any of those instances, but what they said to Moses is, better with it dead. We prefer that we would have died and perished with our brothers than have to suffer in this drought where we have no food in this wilderness, no water, in this wilderness. Let's go to verse 4. Why then have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness for us and our livestock to die here? Why did you make us come from Egypt to bring us into this wretched place? It is not a place of grain or of figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there water to drink. So they murmured, they complained against Moses and his leadership. So what was Moses and Aaron's reaction? How did they react to this? Verse 6 tells us, then Moses and Aaron came in from the presence of the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meetings, and fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. So what did they do? They went to seek the Lord. They went before God, and Yahweh appeared in the clouds. In the cloud, the Shekinah appeared before them. And once everybody saw that, they knew God was going to speak to these men. So what was Yahweh's response? Verse 7. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the staff and your brother Aaron, and you and your brother Aaron assemble the congregation. And notice here, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it shall yield its water. So you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and have the congregation and their livestock drink. So Yahweh said to Moses, you and your brother gather the congregation, and you're going to speak to the rock. The rock will yield water. All right, let's continue. Let's hear what Moses said and what Moses did. So Moses took the staff from before the Lord, just as he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron summoned the assembly in front of the rock. And he said to them, listen now, you rebels. Shall we bring water for you out of this rock? Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their livestock drank. So miracle took place, right? Yeah. However, look at Yahweh's response to this. Verse 12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, since you did not trust in me to treat me as holy in the sight of the sons of Israel, for that reason you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. So this was their punishment. You shall not bring, you, both of them, you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. Verse 13, those were called the waters of Meribah, because the sons of Israel, and that's what the word means. So it means they argued, because they argued with the Lord. So it means contention and strife. And he proved himself holy among them. Let's examine what the passage is saying to us. So the questions we are asking ourselves again. Why were the two leaders prevented from leading the people into the promised land? What was it, because Moses called the people rebels? Did he actually say, drink ye rebels? Let's return to verse 10, which will answer that last statement. So Moses took the staff, and verse 10 says that he summoned the assembly in front of the Lord, and he said to them, listen now, you rebels. Notice he did not say, drink ye rebels. So that's the first thing we want to correct. Moses did not say, drink ye rebels. He referred to the people as rebels. Now we're going to need to answer the question, was it because he called them rebels? But let's find out what the word rebels mean. What is a rebel, or who is a rebel? Rebel, the verb means, the word rebel comes from the same verb rebel. Notice they are pronounced differently. The noun is rebel, emphasis on the first syllable. Rebel, emphasis on the second syllable, is the verb. It means to be contentious or rebellious. And I want you to pay rapt attention to these words, these definitions. It means to be contentious or rebellious. It also means bitter. It means change, to be disobedient, to disobey, grievously, provocation, provoking. All of those words, the Hebrew word that is translated rebel or rebel means these things. So, question, were the children of Israel any of these things? Were they contentious? Were they rebellious? Were they bitter? I'm sure we read what we saw a while ago where they were complaining that they would rather, at one point they said it's better we had died in Egypt. Better we're still in Egypt, at least we had cucumbers and kales and leeks and garlic and onion to eat and fish. But you carry us out here with this to eat this manna. What is this? Yes, they were contentious. Yes, they were provocating. They provoked God. God said to them, you provoked me 10 times. Psalm 95 says that when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works in the provocation, the Lord called it the provocation. Because all of this time while they were wandering through the wilderness, they provoked God's anger. So were they rebellious? Yes, they were. They were rebels. You could describe them as being rebels because they were disobedient. When God said to them, move over to the land, go and conquer now, Caleb and Joshua said, yes, let's do it. And they rebelled. They disobeyed. They are rebels. They were rebels. So personally, there was nothing wrong with the statement made by Moses. And in fact, right through the life of Israel, up until they were carried into the captivity, the Lord referred to them as rebellious. Even while they were in captivity, the Lord, through Ezekiel, called them a rebellious house. So they were indeed rebels. I want you to look at Numbers 14. Numbers 14 in verse 9, Joshua and Caleb, when they brought the good report and the men decided they are not going, Joshua, or was it Caleb? Well, Caleb and Joshua, both of them said, do not rebel against the Lord. Do not act as rebels. Do not be rebellious. Verses 20 through to 24. So the Lord said, I have forgiven them in accordance with your words. So this was Moses now had interceded. When God was going to wipe them out and destroy them, Moses said, God, please don't. And Moses interceded for Israel. And as a result, the Lord said to him, I have forgiven them in accordance with your word. However, as I live, all the earth will be filled with the glory of the Lord, the glory of Yahweh. Certainly all the people who have seen my glory and my signs which I have performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have put me to the test. They have tempted me these 10 times. And let me tell you something. The first time I actually came across that statement from Yahweh, these 10 times, I said, what? I went back and I looked and I checked 10 times. 10 times. And have not listened to my voice. They have not done what? Listened to my voice. They have disobeyed. You could say they have rebelled. Shall by no means see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who were disrespectful to me see it. So Yahweh said, listen, all of those who came out of Egypt, none of them will enter this promised land. Now, I want you to pay attention to what the Lord says here. Those who were disrespectful to me. Okay, so let's compare the translations. So one translation, the NIV says, no one who has treated me with contempt. NLT says the same thing. Another one says, despise me. Several versions use contempt. King James uses provoked me. New King James says rejected me. Amplified says treated me disrespectfully and rejected me. So we get the general idea that they despised, they provoked, they disrespected God. That is rebellion. Now look at this. I want you to note this, and I'm coming back to it. All those, nor shall any of those who disrespect me. We could say anyone who disrespect me, provoked me, rebelled, disobeyed me, will see it. Hold on to that thought. We're going to come back to it. Don't forget what I just said about that. No one. So there are three clear statements. Actually, two, because one actually has two parts. But let's call them three clear statements in Yahweh's response. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, since you did not trust in me, since you did not believe me. Let's look at that. Why did Moses not believe God? How did he demonstrate that? Was he told? He was told to speak to the rock, and he struck the rock instead. Yeah? Let's go back to the passage. For it clearly says here, speak to the rock. And what did Moses do? Moses struck the rock. Moses struck the rock. The next thing, let's go back to this. Why did he strike the rock? And I put it to you that Moses struck the rock because he was pulling on a previous experience of a similar nature. Many people probably do not recognize or realize that there were two different incidents of rock and water coming out of rock. And let's go to that passage. In Exodus, this is shortly after they would have left Egypt. In Exodus 17, 1-6, we read, then all the congregation of the sons of Israel journeyed by stages from the wilderness of Sin. Now, by the way, please note that there are several wildernesses that they encountered between Egypt and the Promised Land. Two of them had very similar name. In this one, we read the wilderness of Sin. In the Numbers passage, it is the wilderness of Zin. Two different places. So don't confuse them. According to the command of the Lord, and camp at Rephidim. Please note where they camped. So they were in a wilderness and they camped in a place called Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. So the people quarreled with Moses and said, give us water so that we may drink. And Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? Why do you tempt? Why do you provoke the Lord? Why are you rebelling against the Lord? But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses and said, why is it that you have brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So Moses cried out. No, I love Moses. Moses, every time the people provoked him, he went to God. Moses cried out to Yahweh, saying, what am I to do with this people? A little more and they will stone me. Then the Lord said to Moses, and I want to observe this, please. Pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. Let's go back. Where were they? They were in the wilderness of Sin. They were in a place called Rephidim. Pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. And take in your hand your staff with which you struck the Nile and go. Go. So he was to take some of the elders and to leave Rephidim and go somewhere else. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. Beloved ones, I put it to you that all these years I've read this passage is the first time noticing this until today when I was doing this study. That the place where they complained and the place where Moses struck the rock were two different places. And he did not strike the rock in front of all the people. It was only in front of a few elders. Let's read it again. You are to take some of the elders with you. You are to pass before the people. In other words, leave them and move on ahead of them. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand your staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. And you will, so Yahweh instructed him in this first instance to strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, not in front of the people. So the first instance that Moses had, he was instructed to strike the rock, but it was not done in front of the entire congregation. It was done in front of just a few elders that he took with him. Note the difference here. In this instance, Moses struck the rock when God said to him he was to speak to the rock. So Yahweh said, you did not trust me to be and believe me. To do what? Second point, to treat me as holy in the sight of the sons of Israel. In other words, to set me apart, to distinguish me in their eyes. So in front of the entire congregation, Moses was required not to strike, so that it would show like it was his human effort that brought it out, but he was to speak to the rock, and Yahweh would have brought forth water out of the rock, showing his might and his power. Let's go to this part. Let's go. Yahweh said, so this is what Moses said. So Yahweh said, speak to the rock in front of the people. And what did Moses say? Shall we bring water? Shall we? Who was he referring to? Himself and Aaron. So he put the focus here on himself and on his brother, not God. So he did not sanctify. He did not make the people fear God in front of them. He did not speak to the rock so that God would respond and show himself a mighty God, a provider in front of them. As far as the people knew in the first instance, they don't know how that water came out there because they didn't see. All they knew is that what Moses and the elders went up to Horeb and they saw water coming out of the mount, out of the rock, flowing down to them in the wilderness. In this instance, Yahweh said, let them see that I am the God who provides. And what did Moses do? He dishonored God. He struck the rock as though it was he and Aaron who were doing this miracle. So the honor would go to them and not to Yahweh. Later Yahweh would say to Eli, those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me will be insignificant. That's what Yahweh said in 1 Samuel 2 verse 30, the principle that he upholds. Those who honor me, I will honor them. And if you despise me, I will make you small. I will bring you down. So the Lord said to him, you did not trust me. You did not believe me. To treat me as holy, to sanctify me, to set me apart in the eyes of the people, to distinguish me in the eyes of the people. Point 3, for that reason, those two combined together is one. I kind of separated it to illustrate or to bring out the technicalities of it. But it's really one reason. Since you did not trust me to treat me as holy, to sanctify me in the eyes, to distinguish me in the eyes of the people. In other words, they robbed God of his honor. For that reason, you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. My God, help us. So it was not about rebels. It was not about Moses calling the people rebel, and certainly not saying drink ye rebels. Notice that Yahweh did not mention Moses calling the people rebels. He didn't say, you have disrespected my people. You have called my people rebels. Because indeed they were. They were rebellious. And rebel is not, to use the word rebel, is not such a terrible word as some people would want to make it seem as if Moses grossly disrespected the people. But the truth is, he identified them by their behavior. They were rebellious. And a rebellious person is a rebel. A disobedient person is a rebel because you rebel against something. Number two, it was Moses who spoke, who called them rebels, and not Aharon. So had it been that it was because he said to them rebels, then God would have judged Moses and not Aharon. But Moses said, shall we, referring to himself and his brother. And what did Aaron do? Aaron did not object to it. Aaron went along. So Yahweh judged them both. He did not oppose to Moses and say, Moses, I don't think it's a wise idea to say we and to do and to strike the rock. Do what God tells you to do and let God get the honor. So Aaron was just as culpable because he did not object to what Moses did. Here are some other passages where Moses kept reiterating this story or this incident. And it grieved. Let me tell you something. Moses carried this to his grave. I'm telling you, it pained his heart at this mistake he made. He kept referring to it. In Numbers 27:14, he said, for in the wilderness of Zin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against my command to treat me as well. This is Yahweh speaking to him. Treat me as holy before their eyes at the water. These are the waters of Meribah of Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. So Yahweh was speaking to Moses again when he was telling him, you're not going. He was reminding him, you are not going to see the promise. You are not going into the promised land. As a matter of fact, he was asking God, please let me see the promised land. God said no. Let me go there. God said no. Deuteronomy 1:37. Remember too, it's Moses who wrote these words, The first 5 books, Moses wrote them. So Moses was actually writing down what happened and what he did and why God didn't allow him to go. Boy, Moses was a real honest man. Deuteronomy 1:37. The Lord was angry with me. He's talking to the children of Israel now. Also on your account, saying, not even you shall enter there. Wow. Deuteronomy 3:25. He was saying to the Lord, please let me cross over and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that good hill country and Lebanon. But Yahweh was angry with me on your account, in other words, because of you, and would not listen to me. Instead, the Lord said to me, enough, do not speak to me anymore about this matter. And finally, in Deuteronomy 4:21, Moses wrote it again. Furthermore, the Lord was angry with me for your sakes, and swore that I would not cross over the Jordan, and that I would not enter the good land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. Now, why does he keep saying because of you? It is not because he said rebels, but it was because he became angry because of their rebellion. And his reaction, he caused them, well, let me say that he allowed himself to get to that place where he dishonored God. Alright? And so God said, you're not going to go over there. So let's bring this home. It should be clear to you by now that, one, Moses did not say, drink ye rebels. Secondly, Moses did not enter the promised land because, not because he used the word rebel, for indeed they were rebels. Secondly, it is because he did not believe what God said. So in the first instance, it is not because he used the word rebel, but rather because he did not believe what God said. He disobeyed God. He also rebelled. Do you realize that he also rebelled against God? I think I missed it, the passage. I should have pointed out to you one of the passages that was read. God said to Moses, you disobeyed me. You rebelled against me. You know, when I said earlier, we're coming back to that statement that whomever dishonor God is not going over into the promised land. Moses also was guilty of that. Wow, yes. Moses also was guilty of that. He rebelled against God's commandment. He disobeyed. Remember, rebel means also disobedience. To rebel is also to disobey. Alright? So Moses, in a sense, also disobeyed, also rebelled against the command of God, the instruction of God. And he did not honor God before the people. So notice that. So this was the reason. And let me just point out one thing here, because I think sometimes people may misunderstand when we talk about Moses not entering the promised land. Moses did not enter the earthly promised land, although he viewed it from Mount Pisgah. That did not stop him from entering the heavenly paradise. So don't confuse the two. And how do we know that? We know because in the Hall of Fame, in the Hall of Faith, Hebrews 11, Moses is mentioned as one of those who would have received a good report. Secondly, we see Moses appearing with Elijah and Yeshua on the Mount of Transfiguration. So we know that Moses did not die and gone to hell. So the promised land here was the physical promised land. Now, if we want to apply that to our lives, there are a couple of things we can take away from this lesson. First of all, we must be careful of our anger, because sometimes our anger may cause us to do and say things that may cost us dearly. Secondly, I want to put it to you that we need to be completely obedient to Yahweh. And sometimes when the Lord may have given us an instruction previously, and that instruction worked, brought forth good results, we might feel the need to use the same method the next time around this situation arises. But Yahweh is not a God to put in a box. He can change. He can change his strategy. And so we have to be open to the Lord for when he wants to give us a different direction. Thirdly, I want to say to us that we must be careful, especially those of us who are followers in the congregation. Be careful how we provoke our leaders. Hebrews says that they have to watch over our souls. Don't let them have to watch over our souls with grief. Hallelujah. We must be careful of that. And fourth, if I may add another point to it, we must be accountable to each other. Why do I say that? Aaron had a responsibility because nobody else was as close to him in the congregation as he was. He was next to Moses. As much as Joshua was Moses' minister, Aaron was next to Moses. Moses was God's messenger, God's prophet. And Aaron was Moses' prophet. That's what the Lord said to him when he called him in Exodus chapter 2, I think it was, or chapter 3, when he said to him, you will be to Aaron as God, and Aaron will be your prophet. Aaron will be your mouthpiece. So many times, Aaron was the one that spoke to the congregation or spoke to Pharaoh, because he was Moses' mouthpiece. He was next in line. When Moses went up with Joshua as his assistant to the mountain in Sinai, what happened? Whom did Moses leave? Aaron. So Aaron had a responsibility to have said to his brother, no, brother, let's not sin against the Lord. Give the Lord his due. And if I may drive home a final point, especially, to all of us, because in every way, all of us are called to honor God in some way. But in particular, those who are called to leadership of some sorts, please remember to give God his honor. Yahweh said, I will not share my glory with anyone. And he's a jealous God, and rightfully so, because he created the world. He has all right to be jealous. He has all the right if he wishes to be jealous, because he is the creator and the sustainer of all things. Let us not find ourselves in that situation, because it may not just cost us the earthly promise. It may cost us the eternal promise. Think on those things. God bless you. Take care and walk good.